Hello, everybody. Here we are, and
Hi
here you
there.
are.
Good to see you. Good to be with you.
Yes. You may have tried to tune in to us last week, and apparently Facebook was making some adjustments with the Facebook Live program, and we were not able to get on, but we did today. And so thanks for coming back if you did try, and welcome if you're here for the first time. We are going to be talking about one of our favorite subjects, and it's also one of the most popular subjects that people like to, or whether they like to or not, argue about. And that is the M word, money. So we're going to be talking about what it is that goes on when we get into breakdowns in our relationship that are based on differences in views or practices involving money, and why that is, and what we can do to kind of work our way through some of those breakdowns in ways that not only can repair whatever difficulties may come up, but can help us to learn more about what's really going on so that we can prevent future difficulties from arising. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty ambitious goal for the time that we have today, but we're ambitious, and hopefully you are too. Mm-hmm. So where do we begin?
I want to talk with the viewers about why it is that the topic of money, when we're discussing it with our partner, can be so loaded. You probably notice that we live in a very materialistic, competitive society, and other cultures don't have quite as big a load on money as we have here. And it is a symbol for successfulness, for security, for some people, it's as extreme as survival. There are issues of self-worth and caring and trust, all tied up about money. And so when we're having a dispute, or couples having interchange that gets heated, it's because of all these connections about what money symbolizes for them. So it's a setup for trouble. And if we can be mindful about taking a look at what money symbolizes for us and why that's sore, why we have such intense feelings about it, what are our beliefs about money, then we can start to disentangle ourselves from the strong emotions and to be able to talk in a more civilized, a more diplomatic, a more successful, skillful way. But we do need to talk about why the conversations trigger us so much. And of course, that starts with telling ourselves the truth about why we get so triggered.
So it's really easy to identify certain psychological factors that maybe go into each of us having our own particular perspective or value that we place on money. But what is at least as important as that, if not more, is the general way in which the culture within which we live holds money, because we can't help but be influenced by that. And among other things, money is such an important aspect of the culture that we live in that it's actually a standard by which we evaluate our own personal worth and value. Mm-hmm. The degree to which we have succeeded in providing enough financial resources for us to live the way we want to live, and to even go beyond that to accumulating more money as a symbol of our success and our competence and our human value. Those are things that we really can't help but be affected by. And we all learn different ways to deal with the social beliefs and expectations and judgments that go along with that.
So some people buy into it and they just take the party line, and the culture puts a script in their hands and they just run around trying to scrape together as much money as they can. And other people, more of a counterculture, say, I'm not going to be co-opted by that propaganda, and I'm not buying into it, and I don't want to be thinking about it, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to deal with it. But either extreme end of the spectrum is not effective.
It's problematic. And people on both sides of that continuum, the ones who buy into money is a legitimate basis to evaluating one's worth and success, and those who say, I don't need that, that's not something that that I'm going to get co-opted into believing. Both of those groups of people tend to hold their view as a superior view to the other side. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, those people often tend to find their counterparts and sometimes even marry them.
Mm-hmm. But both sides of the spectrum, no matter where you fall in the spectrum, you still have to deal with the intense emotions that dealing with issues around money flush up. I'll give you a few examples. Some people avoid talking about money, or when they talk about money, they get flustered and upset and angry and irritable, embarrassed, because they believe that they don't make enough money. Now that may have some rationality to it, or it may be an irrational belief. Often people think that wealth is just a little bit beyond what they have. And they think that if they made just a little bit more money than they do now, that they wouldn't feel so embarrassed about speaking openly about it.
Well, and sometimes there are the people on the other side of that who feel that their partner they're not successful enough, and they criticize them because, you should be making as much money as the Joneses here, or what's wrong with you? How come you haven't gotten a raise? Or,
So those judgments of self or judgments of other close the communication down, because people don't feel safe to discuss it if they feel embarrassed or they feel ashamed. Maybe they feel like they make enough money, but they're embarrassed and ashamed that they don't manage it well, that they haven't saved enough. Maybe they're embarrassed that they don't have a emergency account that's large enough, or any emergency account at all, or money put away towards the kids' college education or their retirement. And so people are sometimes closeted because they feel embarrassed about that. And another thing that can make people feel upset and guilty and want to avoid the discussions is because they have a secret life about money. Like they have secret accounts, or they have secret investments, or they make expenditures that they don't tell their partner about because they think they're going to get in trouble, or their partner's going to be disapproving.
Debts that they don't tell their partner
about. Or they have debts. Or maybe they have debts, that they do disclose, but they feel a sense of helplessness and impotence to do anything about getting out of debt. And so they live with the chronic stress. And the average person in this country's got about $15,000 of debt on their credit card. So it's commonplace for people to have large amount of debt, not just for your house and your car, expensive purchases that we can't usually pay for outright, but other expenditures. People make a way of life of keeping themselves in debt, and they sometimes experience a lot of stress. So when the money conversation comes up, they're already kind of overheated and it's easy to burst into flames.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking of that song in the movie Cabaret, "Money Makes the World Go Round."
Mm.
And, in some literal ways it does. I don't mean it literally spins the world, but but the exchange of money is fundamental to our way of living that we can become very dependent upon. So things that today we see as absolute necessities, like a generation ago or when we were kids, they were luxuries.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a necessity that you had to have two cars. As a matter of fact, a lot of people didn't have cars, when I was a kid. My family did not. I don't even know if I ever told you this, but we never had a car until I was 12 years old.
I didn't know.
Yeah, we didn't have one. We used to use public transportation or sometimes cabs, but usually the main transportation was walking.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many things that we now think, well, that's not a luxury, but that's a necessity. And so when we feel that way, there's this compelling need. It's not a desire, but it feels like it's a need to be able to provide for these necessities. And that puts a lot of pressure on us. It puts a lot of pressure on the people upon whom we depend. And it really can be a source of a lot of stress in our lives.
What we believe are necessities.
Yeah.
And this is another place where we can make headway if we start speaking the truth to ourselves and our partner about examining our beliefs. Is it really true? Because some of the stress around money and why we're sore and apt to burst into flames is because we have beliefs about money that really might not be true and are worth examining. I'll give you a few examples. Money's really hard to come by. You have to knock yourself out and bust your ass to earn money to live these days. Or the zero-sum thinking. I don't want to make too much because if I have more, other people have less.
Or vice versa. If they've got a lot, then that means
I'm disadvantaged.
I don't have as much.
And how about the one about it's a dog-eat-dog world? I got to go grab mine and do it in an aggressive way. And
well, isn't it?
take advantage.
That's the way it is.
I don't think it's a dog-eat-dog world. I don't eat dog. And if we start examining our beliefs, this is part of the way out. Being honest about our feelings and not closeted about them and admitting to them if we feel embarrassed or ashamed or afraid. When we were first together, I had a lot of fears, particularly when we first went into business together. I thought, what am I doing? I never took a business course in school. I don't know how to go into business. And I really had secret fantasies about being a bag lady. When I would see, the women that lived in the streets scrounging around through the trash, I had such survival fears. And I was closeted about them and didn't tell you for a long time. When I finally came out of hiding and I said, I'm afraid we're going to lose everything, that we're doing this big risky thing about going into business with ourselves, and neither one of us really know a whole lot about what we're doing. I don't know if we're going to learn fast enough to be successful. We can lose everything we have.
Didn't I reassure you when I said, don't worry about it. I'll handle it. I've got a good
that
money
didn't
brain.
reassure me at all. No way.
I didn't have a lot of faith in my confidence in myself. Huh?
But when I started,
I didn't either.
When I started to tell the truth about the shadow figure that was plaguing me, she was haunting me, that I could end up being a street person. I can laugh at it now, but back at the time, it wasn't so funny. You helped me have a little humor about it. And there was a moment when I contacted a shadow figure who was rung down from the woman who was digging through the trash for cans and bottles to get some 5 cents to exchange them. She at least had some entrepreneurial spirit. I saw the beggar woman. She didn't even have enough gumption to go through the trash. And I really had these desperate, frightened fantasies about survival. And fortunately, that was a very long time ago. But when I came out of hiding, because I was so embarrassed about these symbols and these pictures that were flowing around in my mind, it freed me. Do you know? And I got to see that the belief that I had that being in business for yourself, you had to be some kind of a, expert scientist and particularly creative and intelligent. And I realized that a lot of people are successful in business and that we could be too. And then the fantasies drifted away. But they didn't start to drift away when I was hiding them from you. They drifted away when I admitted to them.
Yeah, and you have to admit to them, to yourself, first of all. You've got to really tell the truth to yourself about, I've got these concerns, I've got these fantasies, I've got these hopes, I've got these fears. And you've also got to be willing, especially if you're in a committed partnership, to let your partner know. And like Linda said earlier, that can be really tricky because there can be so much shame in just having those fears and those feelings. Like, that reflects something on me that's negative. That shows that I don't have confidence in my own ability. That I'm scared that this could happen. And so, I think it'd be a good idea for us to talk a little bit about where some of that stuff comes from, but more importantly, how we can prevent some of the breakdowns that occur when we get into arguments about money that do not get resolved.
Good. So when people calm down from fighting about money, to not just quit and take a break and go off and do other things and distract ourselves, but stay with it. What is under there? What am I so frightened about? Why am I so angry? What is it that I feel insecure about? What is it that I am expecting of you, maybe irrationally, that I don't feel taken care of, that I don't feel secure, or that I feel guilty I'm not contributing as much as I think I should? That these kinds of conversations are very healing conversations, but sometimes people abort the very necessary step of after the fight to see what was going on there.
What was that all
Why
about?
did
Anyway,
we get so riled up?
Where did that come from? And I think that what we need to be willing to do very often is to examine the money conversation that was prevalent in our family when we were growing up.
Right.
And it's not just about how much money did my parents have, because your family was very materially comfortable, and yet
obsessed.
With
more fear.
You came out of that situation very insecure, despite the fact that there was, sufficient money. I came out of a family where there wasn't much money and it was pretty scarce, but I didn't have that same level of anxiety about it that you did, because what really is important is not how much money did your family have, because like in these cases there could be a lot of money and still a lot of anxiety, or there could be not so much money but also not necessarily a lot of anxiety, but it could go either way. It's really more important than the amount of money that's there is what are the feelings, what are the beliefs that the people in your family, that your parents, that the adults had about money.
That's right. And that's a good place to look at some beliefs that may have been handed down that may not serve you. I got some beliefs about money from my parents that didn't serve me, but there were some beliefs that I got from my family that did serve
That's right, and they served me
that
too.
That you could be in business for yourself.
Yeah.
I got that because my father was in business for himself, and I saw
That's right.
You don't have to be a rocket science to pull it off.
Oh.
You work hard.
Yeah.
I also got beliefs handed down from my family that it's really good to have an emergency account. You never know if somebody's going to get sick and going to be out of work for a while. Don't know if your car's going to get, broken down and you're going to have an expensive repair. And so I got some good teachings from my family, conservative about money, about stoking it away. No matter how little you make,
That's
you
right.
stoke a little away. If you can only save $5 a week, you stoke it away.
Mhm.
And this gentle, steady plotter method has really served me to live with less anxiety.
Well, it's served us too. And another thing that I think has, perhaps the most important belief or value that you took away from your family is to live within your means. And we know so many people who have a lot of money,
but they're so
but
tight. They
they're-
don't go on world travel,
well,
and they don't
that's
gift themselves with the things
that-
that they might enjoy.
Yeah, that too. But what I was about to say, before you finish my sentence, is people who have a lot of money, but they don't feel like they have enough because they don't live within their means. If one of them gets a raise, instead of putting that extra money into the bank or investing it, they'll spend it. And so no matter how much money they have, they spend it.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an idea about money that it's something that you can use when you have it, and that sometimes that you should use
Mm-hmm.
when you have it.
Well, I'm a believer that there's a Buddhist calm with money in the bank, liquid money in the bank that you can put your hands on should you ever need it. It gives me peace and serenity. And I'm glad that you supported me to join me, that we put our values together in that way to live below our means. It's really helped me live with a lot less anxiety in my life than back in the days when we were so close to the edge.
And I used to resent it because I felt like, hey, that's not, we can buy that. Why don't I was more inclined to be on the other side of that spectrum. Not that I'm a big spender, but I wasn't as conscientious as you were about keeping our expenses below our income.
You're welcome. I'm glad that you appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to appreciate you for the time that I took to be home with the babies when they were born.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did have a belief before the children came that because you were going to be supporting the family and you were the income earner and I wasn't bringing in anything for a while and not much for a while, that you had the power then. That was my belief.
Well, yeah, that's another thing about money, is money is power.
And
that's how it seems.
You assured me that I had just as much
Yeah.
power in decision making
I wasn't
about
gonna,
everything,
I
and you
wasn't
never
gonna-
pulled rank on me.
I wasn't going to exploit your being in a different position.
Thank you. And I think that's a belief that trips people up and creates arguments when people feel that they don't have egalitarian decision-making influence. And
Right.
the greatest couples that we know, the most successful couples that we know, both feel that their strengths are respected by the other person. And we have all kinds of strengths. Our ability to make money is just one among many other contributions that we make to the partnership. And I had a lot of fear about that. And you assured me.
You didn't have any reason to trust that that was going to be the case. I was put to the test, and fortunately, I passed the test.
That belief got busted with me. But I remember really being nervous about money back in those days, that I wouldn't be able to save as much or spend as much or have power in decision making about where the money was spent.
That was your biggest fear was, I think, not so much that you wouldn't be able to spend as much money, but that I would take advantage of and exploit your dependency upon me because of the implied power that it seems the primary breadwinner has.
Right.
What is that saying, the golden rule? That he who has the gold rules.
Yeah. Well, that was enormously reassuring and bonding to me, that I could be in a dependent position financially and that you wouldn't take advantage of that. And I have a lot of gratitude for you when other times I haven't been at my best and you didn't exploit it. And all the best couples that we know have that kind of respect for each other's strengths. And I want to assure you that there is a large body of research now about the couples who are collaborators that make it to the co-creative stage. They make a lot more money and they are happier. They're happier not because they make a lot more money. They're happier because of the bond that they have, the secure bond that they have, the egalitarian relationship they have, the co-creative partnership that they don't have to hide, their embarrassment and their shame and their fantasies about being a bag lady, or feeling like they don't make enough money, or they don't manage it well, or they don't have secret accounts and secret investments, and they don't have expenditures that they sneak around about. They're really open with each other. So I think that there's a lot of gold in there. If people, I'm talking about the metaphoric gold, if people can utilize the argument to see what the hell is going on there, do you know what is it that's underneath? That can be a healing experience for each individual involved and a strengthening experience for the romantic partnership.
So if there's one thing that I would like to leave you with before we finish momentarily, it's to be willing the next time you find yourself, or whenever you find yourself in an argument or a conversation about money that begins to get tense or problematic, to just see if you can pause for a moment and check in and ask yourself and ask your partner, what is it that we are really arguing about here? What is the issue underneath the money conversation that we're having? Because money is a symbol, and there's always something underneath it that it's symbolizing. It doesn't mean that we should stop talking about the money, but if we can go a little bit deeper and include in the conversation some awareness of what this is really about, that is activating both of us so much. Is it about trust? Is it about power, control, security? What is it that because when we can get to that level, then we really can do something and understand something at a deeper level that can impact on not just this conversation, but can impact on our whole relationship. Because I guarantee you, these conversations are going to come up.
So I want to tell people what our topic is for the next week.
Okay.
We're talking about deposits in karma, savings, and loan. See you next week.